Is spin to win dead? That's the question that I keep on getting asked on stream, and I just wanted to make a video kind of addressing it and kind of giving my general thoughts and opinions on the topic, because with the recent patch, they made it so that you can no longer melee free walls, and your melee now works based off line of sight, which in itself, in my opinion, isn't that big of a deal because it doesn't really seem to affect my gameplay. But the general consensus from most people in the community is that there's this massive melee rework inbound, basically to kill off spin to win. And I don't think that it's just being implemented to kill off spin to win. I think that they're doing this massive melee haul to kind of make the gameplay feel a lot better, right? So they're just making it more impactful, more engaging, stuff like that. But, you know, you have two different people. You have the person who is okay with melee changes, and you have the very skeptical people who are, you know, pointing out basically every single reason that melee should stay the way it is, why, you know, the melee rework shouldn't happen, or just offering other options for how to solve the problem of spin to win and stuff like that. So the initial issue with spin to win was players could walk up to a wall and they could set up a macro which would make them walk into the wall, do a slide, and then do a melee over and over and over and over again. I've never actually seen anyone do this in game, but it is something that you could do, right? So DE wanted to make it so you couldn't do that anymore. The biggest sort of what's the word to use here, but the biggest, or the biggest usage case, I would say, would be, let's say, like a Skoliak or an Atarax, because these are weapons that have insane range at base because they're whips, right? So your slide attacks have massive range, and you can also get rivens for them, which increases the range stat, right? So we have people saying that, hey, you know, we don't want to have rivens that have range stats and stuff like that. Why don't you just make it so that you don't have range stats on melee weapon rivens or whatever, or you just don't have rivens in general? Which, I mean, I don't know. DE seem to want to have rivens in the game and stuff like that. I personally, I don't care too much about rivens. Yes, they're insane, and I also acknowledge that they are slowly but surely becoming a bigger part of the game. Be that they are very unbalanced in the sense that every single new weapon that comes out has a free disposition, and it's kind of left at that. So you can either get a shit tier roll or a god tier roll, and then that's basically it. Anything that is like a riven disposition of 3 and above is worth rolling, because you can get some pretty good rolls out of it. Like you can get you know, let's say melee damage and crit damage and an element for minus finisher damage or something. And then that would be a pretty good riven, right? If you were just taking that at base value, you get a lot of damage from it and stuff like that. It's fun and it's cool. And it's a neat addition for endgame players, because remember, this is supposed to be a system for endgame players where they can kind of take their crappy weapon and throw this riven onto it, and then they can use their crappy weapon, and it's like, oh, you know, this thing's actually decent. This thing can, you know, be a little bit, what's the word, competitive to things like, let's say, the Bazo of 100 munitions or whatever. So if it wasn't so unbalanced, that would be the case, yeah. We're opening like a massive tin of worms talking about rivens and stuff here, but some people want to see rivens completely gone. Some people want to see certain stats on rivens gone just because they think it's the core sort of issue of people spinning to winning free walls and stuff like that. Where, like, I don't know, people think that because they've made melee line of sight now, it's a little bit more difficult for you to hit enemies. Personally, I've just sat through a 5-hour play session. I didn't really notice a difference, honestly. I still killed every single enemy that I looked at with my polearm. I have prime reach on. I don't have a range riven for that. So personally, spin to win is still a thing, and I don't think that heading into the future, they're not going to directly nerf maiming strike, right? Because 90% flat crit chance, sure, it's good, but the real reason that spin to win is insane is because of maiming strike's interaction with blood rush and body count, right? And what they're doing is they're not directly nerfing maiming strike. They're nerfing light attacks, okay? So your slide attack counts as a light attack. They're making it so that your light attacks no longer scale with your combo multiplier. And that's where a decent chunk of your damage comes from. So what currently happens is you have your base crit chance, and then you have maiming strike thrown into the equation. So let's say with the Skoliak here, you'd have 95% crit chance on every single slide attack if you just have maiming strike equipped. And then, if you have a Riven that'll have slide on crit, that'll be thrown into the calculation as well. And then Blood Rush is also thrown in, and it takes the 165% of the crit chance that your weapon has once you do that slide attack, and then adds that on top, right? So it's taking a percentage of that massive crit chance that you already have because of this maiming strike plus Riven combo, and then giving you even more crit chance on top of that. And then your damage is scaling with not only your crits, like your red critting 100% of the time, so you get that crit multiplier, and then you also get more damage from your combo multiplier, right? So the more you're meleeing, then the more damage you're dealing. And what they're doing is they're making it so that light attacks no longer scale with that combo multiplier. Instead, heavy attacks do, and you use light attacks to basically up your combo multiplier, and then you expend that multiplier with a heavy attack, right? So with that in mind, you're still going to be able to crit, but it's going to deal a lot less damage unless they buff up all the base stats of the melee weapons, right? So if they buff up the base stats of the melee weapons to like I'm not going to say an extreme, but like if they buff it up a lot, then Spin the Win might not go away. It might still be very powerful because all the base damage stats of your melee weapons will be buffed up, so they deal more damage across the board. Spin the Win will still be a thing, right? Best case scenario. But they said that they want to get rid of Spin the Win, or at least to Spin the Win through walls, right? If they wanted to fix Spin to Win, I think all that they really need to do is make it so that maiming strike or slide crit Rivens are calculated after Blood Rush. That would solve so many issues. I think, it would give maiming strike, it would still have a purpose, like you'd still have that extra crit chance, but it wouldn't be as insane, right? It would still be useful, but just not as insane. You wouldn't get a lot of crit chance. So you'd have your Blood Rush, which takes the 165% of 5%, adds that on top, and then your maiming strike and your slide crit Riven comes into the equation. Not as powerful, right? You still get decent value from your Riven mod plus the maiming strike, but what do I know? I just play this game a lot. That's just my take on it, I guess. Honestly, I don't think that range Rivens and stuff like that are necessarily the cause of like people spinning to win. Like it's just, if a person is going to use a macro, like if they're going to walk up to a wall and do this with a macro, that's on the person. They can't do it anymore, which is awesome. So we're basically talking about an issue that doesn't exist anymore. But like I don't see DE like taking action against players who want to do this. They're just going to change up how the game works, and that's where players have issue with the whole melee rework thing. It seems like they're just fixing an issue which could have been fixed in another way by just banning people who abuse macros, because people feel like the whole line of sight change with the melee kind of messes up how they play the game, like the line of sight and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe I have to play more with like two-handed melees and stuff like that to really see like the big negative factors, I guess. But from my standpoint, someone who uses Spin to Win a lot, someone who knows a lot about the game, someone who has all the good mods and stuff like that, doesn't really seem like it's going to be that big of a deal heading into the future. I think Spin to Win is still going to be a playstyle which exists in the game. It might not be as insane, but it's still going to exist, and I support DE in the sense that they're pushing forward to make changes to make melee feel more impactful. But of course, there's the worry there with the community that they might mess it up. And don't get me wrong, whenever we're talking about a game that has so many different equations and stuff, and so many different methods of meleeing, there can definitely be like cause for concern there, right? Because people are concerned that Weeping Winds and Blood Rush won't be as good anymore. I think that it still will be, especially if you have like a weapon build which heavy attacks are going to be the meta, right? Personally, I think condition overload after this melee bypass is going to be the meta, right? Because they're not going to change up how condition overload works, right? So I think condition overload is going to be the meta, because you're going to build up all the status procs on an enemy with your light attacks, and then with your combo multiplier, you can expend everything that you built up with your light attacks in one heavy attack and one hit an enemy, which is pretty cool, because you're going to have all those status effects on, buff up your damage, plus the multiplier, heavy attack, one hit. Pretty cool. So if they're going for like impactful melee, where like enemies stagger backwards when you hit them and stuff like that, I think it's going to be a positive change. But like I said, who knows? You know, like only time can tell, and we just have to, in my opinion, stop worrying about it for now. Like I said, I think spin to win is still going to be a playstyle which exists within the game. And I think that melee is going to be better in the long run for these changes that are coming into the game too. I think that condition overload is going to be the meta. I don't know how Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds are going to be affected, of course. But like I said, only time will tell. We just have to wait. And hopefully in the next dev stream, they talk a little bit more about that. Maybe release a dev workshop or something about the ongoing melee changes, because they're probably really hard at work trying to figure out something that works. So that's really all I can say. But other than that, guys, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button below. If you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.